Hi, everybody. Welcome to Studio 216. We're launching a new series today, Icons of Acadiana. And here we are with an icon of Acadiana, Lester Gauthier.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is I'm new to the status of iconography or whatever that is.
Okay, and you're a criminal defense attorney.
Yes, I am. I've been a lawyer for 47 years.
Okay.
I got out of law school in 1976 and practiced with a couple of firms for a very short period of time, and I've been a sole practitioner for the great bulk of those 47 years.
Okay. And you're an LSU graduate?
I'm an LSU law school graduate, yes. My alma mater, however, my alma mater, my nourishing mother, is the University of Southwestern Louisiana. That's my alma mater. I did attend and graduate from LSU Law School.
Okay.
But given a choice between UL and LSU, I tend to go with UL.
Oh, I can't blame you for that.
No, hopefully not.
Hey, well, tell me, where did you grow up?
Oh, that's a good one. I grew up, although I was born at the hospital here in Lafayette, so I can say I was born in Lafayette, but they brought me home to Maurice, Louisiana, which is just on the other side of the parish line. I grew up there. My mother was a school teacher. My father commuted to work for Gulf State Utilities in Lafayette, and so I attended Maurice Elementary School from, I guess, grades 1 to 8. And then I went to Immaculata Seminary, which was a Catholic boarding school where you studied to be a priest. There I met a lot of people who ended up all over Acadiana in all kind of leadership positions, mostly not as priests, as lawyers, judges, social workers, et cetera, and so on. One of whom is Bob Paul the mayor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you this. Do you remember your first criminal case?
Ooh,
Can you tell us about it?
Well, I think I probably represented a young man who probably had some marijuana, and I filed a motion to suppress the search, and had a nice hearing on it. I didn't win it, and we ultimately pled him. It wasn't that serious.
Okay.
Thankfully, it wasn't. It was a small quantity of marijuana.
Sure.
Probably so small that in this day and age, it might not even be illegal. It might not even be illegal.
Sure.
I've had some other more significant cases, though.
Tell us about it.
And back in late 89, beginning of 1990, there was a 167-person indictment, federal indictment. Someone had taken a barge and brought it up through the Gulf of Mexico, loaded with marijuana, made it up the Vermilion River to a certain shipyard located at Banker, Louisiana, which is below Abbeville. I don't know how they got that barge up the river unnoticed. Who knows? And they unloaded a barge full of marijuana at that site. They unloaded it all night long. And there were 167 people indicted, many of whom were guilty of having something to do with that offloading. I was asked to represent somebody from Detroit, Michigan. And we went to trial. 20 people went to trial. I represented this man from Detroit, Michigan. And 16 of the 20 people were found not guilty. Unfortunately, I think the government had overcharged people. Anybody who had anything that remotely to do with anybody halfway connected to the case. And so I guess the lesson learned there is people get indicted, which means that there's maybe some evidence. The grand jury thinks there's some evidence, probable cause to think that maybe somebody might have done something, might have been around a crime. But the ultimate test is to go to a jury and determine whether the government can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they were in fact guilty of a crime.
Sure.
My guy was found not guilty after a 3-month-long trial.
Wow.
Now, the good point is that it was in Lafayette, Louisiana, so my office was not far from the courthouse. We only went Monday through Thursday. We had Fridays off. Every Friday we were off. And we were off for 2 weeks during the Christmas break. Came back in January of 1990 And after 3-month-long trial, 16 of 20, as I said, were found, not guilty.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you, we all try to follow the law, and, most of us do. But when people don't, tell us why they need a defense attorney.
You get to kind of restate the inquiry. Sometimes I am asked, how can you represent somebody that you know is guilty? Well, the first thing is, as soon as I meet a client, how is it that I can know he's guilty? I have no data. So everyone who's being investigated, everyone who's charged with a crime, isn't necessarily guilty. I've represented two young people that whose reputations are almost ruined, suspended from their jobs, et cetera, and so on. And after the facts come out, it turns out that the state did not charge them with any crime, whatsoever.
Right.
As a lawyer, I don't know often whether a person is guilty or not guilty. And let's take the other case where, okay, maybe there's overwhelming evidence that points towards a person's guilt. Okay, then the question is, they're guilty of what? Guilty of murder? Guilty of drug dealing? Guilty of speeding 100 miles an hour? Which one is it?
Right.
What is the right crime that they're supposed to be charged with?
Right.
Now, if you're speeding 100 miles an hour, okay, that's prohibited. That's prohibited conduct.
Yeah.
But it's not drug dealing.
Right.
So if you're charged with drug dealing and speeding 100 miles an hour, we have to determine, well, what did you do? Did you do both of those? Or were you simply speeding 100 miles an hour and you had $2,000 in cash in your car? So because you had $2,000 in cash in your car, it doesn't make you a drug dealer. Might make you speeding 100 miles an hour. So there's an inquiry has to be made. If a person is guilty, what is he guilty of?
Right.
Secondly, if a person is guilty of a crime, what was his state of mind? What was his background? Is he a military veteran who did 3 tours in Iraq, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, who walked into a bar and guy clanged something and whatever, and before one thing led to another, and he gets in a barroom fight and maybe hurts somebody in a barroom fight?
Yeah.
Okay? So does it help explain why that person was in a barroom fight when a loud noise was made?
Right.
If a guy did 3 tours in Iraq and suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, I would say it would.
Sure.
Now, again, it doesn't those factors don't exonerate. No, they don't exonerate you necessarily. If there's a criminal statute, if there's a line not to be crossed, you cross the line, then you are, again, potentially guilty of that crime. But the next inquiry is, well, what are the factors that we have to consider in fashioning the right sentence for you? Okay, were you physically abused as a child? Right. Were you orphaned when you were 12 years old, 18 years old, or even 20 years old, 20 years old?
So what you're saying is there's always more to the story than meets the eye.
And the story is an individual story.
Right.
It's not the next guy's story. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It shouldn't be. What is this person's story?
Right.
And each person is entitled to somebody to advocate, to tell his story. And
that's where you come in.
That's how I see my role. Now let me just tell you, it's not an easy one. It's not an easy one, and even within the last few days, you get disappointed because you deal with people and you try to help them. Some people are, unfortunately, because of their condition, are not wise enough to allow you to help them.
Right.
Or how about this? If you explain to them what the reality is, what the situation is, they don't want to hear reality. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, the work I do is reality-based. It's reality-based. Okay? People are, they're facing you get caught dealing a lot of drugs,
Mm-hmm.
the reality is that you might be doing a lot of time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I still have to evaluate, how much drugs was involved. What was that person's role? Was he a kingpin? Was he a
Right.
was he a low-level fetch it guy? What was his role here? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, kingpin or fetch it guy, they get indicted in federal court. The potential is they're looking at sentences between 18 and maybe 20 years. My job is to try to evaluate how bad the problem is, look at the evidence, look at the discovery material, and to try to advise the person what it is that they're looking at.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you, people don't like to hear the reality of their situation. And so, is it frustrating for me when you do the best you can to try to help somebody, and they can't accept the reality that they have created?
Right.
Unfortunately, rarely do I, as a lawyer, create their reality.
Sure.
Now, I'm going to tell you another one. I told a young lawyer one time, we were representing people, multiple defendants in a drug case, and I told the young lawyer, I said, just keep in mind, whatever happens here is going to be your fault. And she looked at me and said, what do you mean? I said, you have to understand that whatever happens that's not good for your client, you're going to be blamed for whatever happens.
Right.
I said, you need to understand that from day one, and then you've got to work backwards from that. Now,
Oh, that's interesting.
if you can't handle the fact that you're going to get blamed for whatever happens bad, if you can't handle that, then you got to get out.
So for you, it's your job to do the best that you can possibly do. And if it doesn't work out and you get blamed, that's just part of the game.
It is part of the game. And you got to have thick enough skin to understand that that's the way, that's part of the process.
Right.
And of course, it's now. Don't get me wrong. I'm getting tired. I'm getting tired because you do this over a lot of years, and there's you get an accumulation of attempts to help people.
Sure.
And clients who can't quite understand or refuse to understand. I had a guy one time. He told me, I said, this is what you're looking at. These are what the sentencing guidelines are. He says, I refuse to do that time. I said, well, we'll tell the judge that you refuse to do the time, and we'll see how that works out for you.
So let me ask you this, Lester. How many defendants do you represent who just won't tell you the truth? And because I would think that telling the truth to your attorney is essential.
Well, it is, and then again, it isn't. And let me try to tell you that there isn't. A client is free to tell me whatever it is that he chooses to tell me. Now, it is very clear, and there's a rule of ethics and a rule of law, both, that says if a client tells me something, that is a confidential communication. That means that I cannot disclose that conversation. Okay, I cannot disclose it ethically, the rules that I live by as a professional, and legally, the rules that the system sets up. That is to allow for the free communication. But sometimes the inquiry is that the defendant has a right to tell me or not tell me whatever he wants to tell me. And so sometimes the inquiry is not so much if he has a secret that nobody knows about, maybe he keeps that secret. The issue becomes, I have to review the evidence. What is the evidence against you?
Right.
Now, if 12 people claim they saw you do something, doesn't mean you did it, but it means we got a tough time here, don't we?
That's reality.
Yeah, we got reality. Now, is it possible that the 12 people are wrong? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And if my client says, I don't care what the 12 people said, I did not do that. Possibly he didn't. Could have been his twin brother, his identical twin brother who was seen by the 12 people. Now, he may choose not to tell me. He says, all I'm telling you is it wasn't me. Now, he's not obligated to tell me, oh, by the way, you know who it really was? It was my twin brother.
Okay.
He's not obligated to tell me that.
Sure.
He can tell me that if he chooses to tell me that, it would be confidential.
Right.
But so sometimes the inquiry, you know, the client is free to interact with me on the level that he wants to interact. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's talk about drunk driving, simply enough. A person sideswipes a car and then takes off and goes home. He's found out later he's charged with hit and run driving. Now, the truth of the matter is, I can take a guess. One of the reasons why some of my clients leave the scene of an accident is because why? Because they're impaired.
They didn't even know they were in an accident.
Sometimes they don't. They potentially were impaired.
Sure.
But the issue, again, so you say, well, the truth is maybe they're impaired. Well, the issue becomes, what crime are they charged with? And what can the state prove? Okay. Now, the state, in that case, may be able to prove that they were in fact in an accident and hit and ran. Maybe they have no proof of intoxication. By the way, I have no evidence of intoxication. I can take a guess that maybe the person may have been drinking, but a guess that a person may have been drinking is not sufficient.
Right.
My guess is not sufficient.
Right.
Nor is your guess, nor is the judge's guess.
Right.
That he may have been drinking.
Okay.
What's required is proof. Now, the proof would exist probably in that case if somebody got his license plate that he's guilty of hit and run driving. That's a crime, and
Right.
he'd have to face it's a moving violation. Insurance, he'd have to face the consequences. He may or may not have been impaired at the time, but we don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. You said that it's a really hard job, and I'm sure it is. I could never do it. But the whole, courts, law enforcement, they're all very difficult jobs, and all these folks are doing the best they can, and
and if people do the best they can in good faith, then the system works.
Yeah.
Okay? Now let's talk about the role. For example, people complain about this judge or that judge, et cetera, and so on. Listen, you deal with judges. You know what I call when I walk into court? The guy with the black, or the lady with the black robe, I call him judge. And I treat them respectfully.
Sure.
And they make rulings. Sometimes I like them, sometimes I don't. But what I do is, when they make the ruling, then that's the ruling of the court. Now there's ways of, if you think it's that bad, you can take an appeal.
Sure.
9 times out of 10, an appeal doesn't help.
Right.
And so you may have to live with a decision that you maybe personally don't agree with.
I see.
But if the judge is in good faith and considering the facts, and he makes a call. It's the same as in a baseball game. Umpire's out there and he says, strike. Well, it might have been that much outside. But I mean, if he's not on the take, if he's not being bribed, and that's his call, well, then that's his call. It's part of the game.
Right.
The imperfection of the umpire is part of the game.
That's part of the game.
The imperfection of the judiciary, or your view that the judge didn't do what you wanted him to do.
Right.
That's part of the deal.
Sure.
But I'm going to make this comment. I don't get to walk outside the courthouse and say that judge is no good. That judge is on the take. The whole case was rigged. I don't get to do that. And I don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't do that.
Okay.
Because, no matter how much you don't like the decision or disagree with the decision, that is the system. It's an imperfect system.
Sure.
But as many people say, it's the best one that probably exists in the whole world. The best one in the whole world.
I see. Okay, well, let's change the subject a little bit.
Okay.
It's so fascinating to talk to you about the law. But what do you do in your spare time? How do you have fun?
Well, pretty much every Saturday morning I go out to the horse farm, now known as Monkus Park, and I play Cajun music.
I've met you.
You have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to play at the Cajun Jam all the time.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. Well, so it's a combination of, I can't say like some people I started when I was 5 years old, because I didn't start. I started when I was about 50. Yeah, but I had the capacity to speak French, and I had the capacity to sing, which I sang in a boys' choir, when I was younger. And it's kind of put the two together and started singing Cajun music, one song at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a rank amateur. I'm an amateur. I rarely ever got paid to play music, or I think I have maybe once or twice in my life, but I don't.
And your instrument is?
It's a washtub bass.
The washtub bass.
It's a washtub bass. Yeah, that instrument was created by a guy named Dale Savoie, and he had a Ward Masters and Trophy Land located on Johnson Street across from the Piccadilly there. And I used to go to jam sessions with Dale, and he made that. He's a former industrial arts teacher. He fabricated it, did an excellent job. It's an overturned wash tub. He fabricated a nice wooden arm. It's got a tuning key. It's an actual E string off a stand-up bass. And the design actually is really, I would call it fairly sophisticated for a washtub bass.
For a washtub bass.
It's fairly sophisticated. And
it sounds great.
I've had a lot of fun. I played alongside some really good musicians.
Oh,
That's
they're
one
awesome
thing.
musicians.
And you get a chance to play alongside some really good musicians. And I paid him maybe less than a couple $100 for it, but I got $1 million worth of pleasure out of it so far. So I'm a little bit ahead.
Okay.
I'm a little bit ahead, So it turns out that I guess a few years back, Warren Perrin runs some events at the Cajun Museum in Iran, and he has named, probably hundreds of people, living legends, from former governors and singers, et cetera, and so on. And somehow I got into that group and was named a living legend. They never told me why exactly, but my best guess is because I participated in a French table for about the last 40 years. And, I guess I'd say I believe in the preservation of the Cajun culture, the French Cajun culture. Very pleased to be able to speak French with people from France, from Belgium, from Canada, from Africa, from the French colonies of Africa, from Haiti. It matters not. And one of the things, I guess the points I want to make is they used to tell us, used to tell Cajuns that first, you didn't speak real French, and that's absolutely, positively not correct. The language is French.
Yep.
I speak the Cajun French dialect indigenous to Vermilion Parish, the parish where I come from. But the core of 85 to 90 is French. And so people say, yes, but you don't speak French the way they do in Paris. Well, my response is, you don't speak French the way they do in London. And you don't. You speak the American dialect of English. It's a dialect that you speak. You do not speak London English or English, whatever you want to call it. I do not speak the way they do in Paris, France. I speak French the way they do in this local area. But it does, in the same way that you wouldn't allow somebody to say, well, you don't speak real English, you don't speak good English. You wouldn't allow people to tell you that. Well, then I don't allow people to tell me that I don't speak real French or good French. Now, neither one of those things was ever correct. And I need to correct the record on that.
So you're not only an icon of Acadiana, you're also a living legend.
Well, yeah, of sorts.
Well, I tell you what, I want to thank you, Lester Gauthier, for joining us here at Studio 216 for our very first Icons of Acadiana segment. And I think that's going to wrap it up for us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time.
I'll see you at the Cajun Jam.
There you go.